Brilliant. Thank you guys for coming. We'll just give it a couple of seconds for everyone to trickle in. It's great to see so many of you on the call today, and welcome to today's webinar focusing all things halal dairy exports, and thank you so much for joining us. Before we dive in, I want to quickly go over some housekeeping items so we can just ensure everyone's got the best possible experience during today's webinar. So first of all, we've turned off all of your cameras and microphones to prevent any interference with the recording. The webinar is going to be recorded and put on our website for the future and for people to watch back. So most of you will be familiar with AHDB and the work that we do on dairy exports, but for those of you who might be a bit less familiar, AHDB Dairy Exports is made up of myself, Rachel Speed, our colleagues in Market, Adil Khan, who will be joining us later, alongside Karen Lau in Asia and Victor Willis in the USA, who are half funded by DBT as part of the Dairy Export Programme. We're led by Lucy Randolph on the call, our Head of International Trade Development, and we run a programme of overseas trade shows with dairy exporters alongside in-market trade promotion activities and work to elevate the reputation of the British dairy sector and to support dairy exporters to grow British dairy exports to overseas markets. And a big part of this is an education piece like what we're doing today around halal dairy exports. We're excited to be joined today by Anita, who is a Trade Policy Manager at the Department for Business and Trade in Indonesia, who will be talking us through the halal certification process in Indonesia. Given the time difference and that she's 7 hours ahead, we're going to be doing questions at the end of her section. So if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box and we'll come to them as we go along. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can, but if we can't get to yours during the session, then we'll take it away and get back to you to the best of our abilities. After Anita, we'll be joined by Adil Khan, our AHDB Dairy representative based in Dubai, who's been with AHDB since July. And we'll be joining Lucy and I at Gulfood in just over 2 weeks. Adil has pre-recorded his session on the retail landscape in the GCC and routes to market, as he's currently actually on the ground doing some in-store retail promotions with Lulu Qatar, which is one of the amazing outcomes of the UK Dairy Showcase from September. But is going to be dialing in at the end of the session to answer any questions related to the Middle East. Finally, Tanveer Parkar, AHDB's Senior Market Access Manager with an extensive background in halal certification, will do a deep dive into what makes dairy products halal, the certification process and requirements in third countries, and some labelling best practices in the dairy sector. We're then going to open up the floor to any questions you have, so please do send them in through the Q&A button and we'll be monitoring them online. So without any further ado, let's kick things off. I'll hand over to Anita, who is going to talk us through the Indonesian market.
Thanks, Rachel. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon Indonesia time. Just a bit on Indonesia halal certification background. So this regulation was initially drafted back in 17 May 2019, where the Indonesian government start to take a look on reassuring these consumers to have a better decision making in what kind of products they would like to consume, and hereby the government then decided that now we need to regulate the halal and non-halal labeling and including its certifications, knowing the fact that Indonesia is now the biggest Muslim country in the world. Starting from there, the halal certification, if you can see on the fourth slide on the presentations, the Indonesian government then created three different government agencies to tackle this halal regulations perspective. The first stakeholders that you need to know when you're about to register halal certification in Indonesia is that BPJPH is the halal regulatory agency who usually holds the main agenda on the product registrations. And then number two, on the blue side, on the blue circle that you can see on the screen, is MUI, is the associations of all Indonesian ulama for the Muslims, who also holds the advisory board for the BPJPH. So albeit the fact that the actual product registration is the responsibility of BPJPH, MUI also holds the advisory on how the regulation should looks like and how the labeling should looks like and what are the outcomes or the developments that the government would like to attain from a year government perspective. And then on the third one is the HCBs or the Halal certification bodies, which is the partner of the BPJPH. Since its first time ruling back in 2019, It's actually already developed as in a regulations. Now, on the 6th year of its upcoming, they now have implemented an online application system, which if you would like to register for a halal certification for your dairy product export to Indonesia, you can ask your importer or your local partners to apply for the halal certification for your product. Otherwise, if you haven't have an importer back in Indonesia or local partners in Indonesia, then you can go to UK HCBs, which existing in the UK. So far, we have four partners that is now recognized as the halal certification body partnering with Indonesia. Those for UK HCBs, Rachel, I think you can set it out later if you can. The four are Halal Food Authority Limited, and then Halal Certification Euro or HCE, Halal Certification Organization Limited, and Islamic Chamber for Halal Services or HCHS. So if you would like to register for the Halal certification via the UK HCBs, you don't have to go through the local Indonesia BPJBH application system, be it online or the offline one. Once you register with the UK HCBs, they will handle your applications, and then they will do a site inspections, and they will do the desk review, and then they will issue the halal certification or do the evaluations with you and your companies, if that applies. Usually, the amount of time needed to be taken from application started until the receivement of the certification for the halal is within 45 working days. That's like the maximum time, but it can go as short as 30 days according to the BPJBH governments. So the other thing on the policy side is that you would know that halal certification is mandatory for all products in Indonesia. This not only includes the food and drink, but also pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, chemical products, genetically modified products, biological products, and other goods that the people use or utilize. This will also include the services that then participated in the supply chain of the product making, such as the processing and then storage and then the packaging, distribution, animal slaughter, on the sales and the serving. They would also need to be halal certified. But now, since we have the UK HCBs as our partner, as the BPGPH partner, the process will be easier as they will do the site visit and site inspection and the evaluation together with your companies. They will also give you recommendations on what you should do or what you need to do or to adjust in order for you to get the halal certifications. Regarding the cost of the halal registrations itself, I might say that it depends. Formally, for the BPJBH Indonesia, if you register via the online application system in Indonesia, it will cost you around 18 million rupiah, which is around £400. That is not included with the site inspection that you will need to pay for the auditors from Indonesia to go to the UK. But if you register from the UK HCBs, I checked and they said that the amount would lies around 500 to £600, including other services fee. So I would actually recommend you, if you'd like to have a halal certification for your dairy products before exporting to Indonesia, it's better to go via UK HCBs, especially if you don't have a local partner in place yet in Indonesia. In terms of the products and the services that needed to be halal certified, back in last year in October 2024, the Indonesian government actually launched a relaxation policy where all those regulations on the needs to have the halal certification is now postponed to October 2026, on the 17th of October 2026. So it kind of gives us 2 years to adjust and to register ourselves with the UK HCBs, or if you have an implementing partner in Indonesia already, then register with the BBJBH Indonesia. But that relaxation only applies for exported products, which means that for SMEs or MSMEs in Indonesia, for the local product in Indonesia, those regulations that needs to have the halal labeling or non-halal labeling is already applied in here, including with all restaurants, with all vendors and stores, and the processing or the storage and the packaging facility in Indonesia for the local products now has been implemented. But for export products from the UK, for example, we still have until 17 October 2026 to um, comply with the regulations. Now, the halal certification, one of the requirements is also to have the halal labeling and the products, um, which we were having a meeting with the BBGBH last month back in December, where they actually confirmed that now a guidelines, an English guidelines on how the halal label should look like, now has been published. So you can access it on the BBJPH website, but I can also send you through email if that's possible to do. But basically, the halal labeling that needed by the Indonesian government is simple. It only needs to contain the text of halal, or the symbol that it is halal, and it's already internationally standardized. So the pictures, the text should look like quite similar with the other countries' halal regulations. Based on what we heard and based on the guidelines, it says that it can be in a form of a sticker, it can be in a form of a specific label, as long as it is in the part of the products that being sold, or it is in the part of venue, for example, that can be seen easily. So it doesn't need to have like a certain specific or a unique requirements to be a halal label, but as long as it can be seen easily on the products that's being sold or on the facility that is being halal certified, then you should be good. Now, what about the non-halal labeling? So in that diagram, it doesn't says that BPJPH Indonesia as the halal regulatory agency is only taking care of the halal regulations, but actually the non-halal labeling or non-halal regulations is taken care by other institution in Indonesia called BPOM. They are actually the food authority agency who then upholds about the non-halal regulations, including the labeling. But fortunately, we have checked with the BPOM, and they stated that it's quite similar with the halal labeling, where it says that as long as it's easily seen by the consumers and it's not easily removed from the product or not easily removed from the venue, or the facility that's being halal certified, then that should be fine. Which means that if you can put like a bold text somewhere in the product or somewhere in the facility saying that it's non-halal, then that should be fine. That also includes a sticker where, for example, if you prefer to use like a pork symbol or any other allergen that is non-halal, you can also use that. Or if you'd like to use any other non-halal symbol that is standardized, such as via EU regulations, then you can definitely use that as long as it's easily seen by the consumers and as long as it's not easily removed or easily ripped off from the products or the venue. Um, One other thing on the regulation side, that usually being asked to to the embassy officials regarding halal certification is the zonation regulations. So back in October 2024, when the relaxation has just been launched, some of the UK industries were quite confused by the fact that the Indonesian BPJBH does not recognize whales as part of the UK. This is quite a strange situations that we found out, but actually we have confirmed with the BPJBH Indonesia last month back in December that this is not the case anymore. There was a misunderstanding. They were thinking that Wales is a different part of the UK. So now they now understand that Wales is also part of the United Kingdom. So the donations issue should not be available anymore, as in that the UK now has been recognized as like the whole UK as it is known internationally. Rachel, I think that's all from me. But if you can pass the presentation letter to the attendees for them to read, then that would be great. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anita. We've got some questions coming in. So first of all, would you be able to list off the 4 UK halal certification bodies which are recognised by BBJPH, please?
I can send you the text after this on the chat box, but for your convenience, the 4 UK HCBs is Halal Food Authority Limited. The second one is Halal Certification Bureau, HCE. The third one is Halal Certification Organization Limited. And the fourth one is Islamic Chamber for Halal Services, or ICHS. I think there were a press release on this as well, which I can send you the link later.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We can circulate the link after this meeting. Next up on the list. So earlier on in the presentation, you mentioned about supply chain requirements. Can you just clarify if this means that hauliers and carriers moving goods to Indonesia must also be halal certified, not just the manufacturer producing the goods?
In short, yes. This might looks like a super huge palaver, but the fact that we have checked the reality, those facility also will be needed to be halal certified, because the Indonesian government was quite anxious. If they are not halal certified, then they will kind of mix it with the non-halal products or non-halal ingredients. So sort of like avoiding cross contaminations. But as long as you can prove, when you apply to the UK HCBs for your products, as long as you can prove that you can guarantee that your product will not be in danger of cross contamination with the non-halal ingredients, for example, then the UK HCBs will create the decision later whether or not to approve your inquiry. So I think there will still be a room for negotiation with the UK HCBs when you're registering your products and your facility.
Brilliant, thank you. And then the final question. So earlier on in the presentation, you spoke about zones within the UK, and you mentioned specifically Wales being part of the UK. But can we just clarify if BBJPH recognises Northern Ireland as part of the UK in terms of their zoning?
Yeah, that too actually. So they were thinking that Northern Ireland is actually part of Ireland instead of part of the UK. And we have confirmed and validated to them last month, and now they have recognized Northern Ireland as well as part of the UK. So UK is now being recognized by BBJPH as it is internationally. So yes, problem solved. Northern Ireland is part of the UK and is recognized by BBJPH.
Amazing, thank you so much. I think that's it in terms of questions at the moment, but I'm sure some people may have some at the end of the presentation, which we can send on to you for you to answer at your own time. But thank you so much for being able to make the time, Anita, to come and speak with us.
Thank you, Rachel. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so next up we have Adil Khan, who's pre-recorded his presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. Please do let me know in the chat box if any of you can't hear the recording at all, and we can circulate that one afterwards. But please bear with me as I just share my screen here for this one.
Brief overview of the food and drink sector within. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. It is great to see so many of you attending this webinar. My name is Adil Khan, and I'm the Vice President for Market Development for Dairy at AHDB, focusing on the Middle East region. Based in Dubai, I've been in this role since August 2024. I have lived and worked in the region for the last 25 years, a good part of which was with the Department for Business and Trade. Today, I'm here to provide you with a brief overview of the food and drink sector within the GCC, complemented by a snapshot of the dairy sector. I hope that you will find this presentation both informative and beneficial. Starting off with a little bit of background on the GCC. The GCC stands for the Gulf Cooperation Council, made up of 6 countries, namely Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. The GCC was formed in 1981 due to their geographic proximity, similar political systems based on Islamic beliefs, and common objectives. It presently encompasses a total area of about 2.6 million square kilometers. The official language is Arabic, although English is widely spoken. It has a total population of about 59 million, with Saudi Arabia being the largest country. Expatriates make almost 30 million of this total population. The total GDP of the 6 countries was expected to be $2,100 billion by the end of 2023. To put it in perspective, that is sort of more than 3 times the GDP of Poland, 1.5 times the Spanish GDP, and equal to Italy's GDP. Nearly 80 to 85% of all food products are imported into the region. Especially Saudi Arabia and UAE are taking big leaps in setting up food processing and agri-tech facilities in their countries to bring this dependence on imports down. The region, characterized by a high income bracket population, swift urbanization, a growing expatriate community, and a flourishing tourism sector, has witnessed significant growth in its F&B sector. This trend will continue in the future. Consumer preferences influenced by a demographic dominated by youth, an increase in health consciousness, and a trend towards Western food culture, the F&B scene is undergoing significant changes. Increased tourism to the region and increased travel by locals and expats contribute to a diverse food culture, stimulating demand for an array of international cuisines. Digital transformation is reshaping the F&B sector. In the GCC, online food delivery platforms have grown exponentially. Online shopping is becoming a way of life. The global sustainability trend is also influencing the GCC. Consumers are becoming more aware of their food choices, environmental impact encouraging F&B companies to adopt sustainable sourcing, packaging, and waste management practices. Despite the abundant opportunities the GCC F&B market offers, companies also need to understand and adapt to its dynamic regulatory environment. The region has witnessed the introduction of VAT, mandatory registration with local authorities such as SFDA in Saudi Arabia, and the introduction of short shelf life for dairy products in Qatar. Despite being an economic bloc, different import rules are applied to F&B imports into each of the 6 countries. It can be challenging therefore, to keep track of these differences and the changes that take place. The cost of doing business in the GCC's F&B market is relatively higher compared to the EU and other developed markets because of the high margins demanded by distributors and aggregators such as retailers. Dubai is seen as a test market for the region, thereby putting pressure on suppliers who see success in Dubai as a sure shot success for the region, which may not always be the case. Suppliers and buyers constantly must think of new ways to stay relevant to customers in the ever-changing environment. I'll put up some of the latest statistics for the GCC food and beverage market until about 2029, as you can see on the slide. The region has a growing demand for healthier and organic options. Online food delivery platforms such as Noon, Talabat, Careem, Uber Eats, Hunger Station, Deliveroo, and many others have also had a significant impact on the food and beverage sector in the GCC. These platforms have made it easier for businesses to reach customers through online channels and have created new opportunities for restaurants and food businesses. Retail chains and online platforms have expanded their online offerings, adding delivery vans and dark stores to the mix, thereby giving consumers choices that were unheard of pre-COVID. Just a little bit of explanation about dark stores, which might be a new term for people in the UK. So dark stores are actually retail outlets spread across a city. So for example, in Dubai, Noon offers, which is an online platform, offers a 15-minute service. How do they deliver to customers within 15 minutes is very simple. They have retail outlets spread across Dubai. So if I order a 15-minute service on Noon for some grocery, it'll go to the nearest retail store, which is only accessible to Noon. A rider will pick it up from that store, which is closest to me, and deliver it to me within that 15-minute window. So that's the term that's used here for dark stores. Investment in food processing is growing, with large organizations in the UAE and Saudi Arabia getting into manufacturing products for local consumption, as well as to target overseas markets. This presents a real opportunity for locally made and imported products to be exported to the region and beyond. Coming to the dairy market in the GCC. The GCC dairy market is experiencing robust growth due to factors such as urbanization, a young and affluent population, and changing dietary habits. The market reached 11 billion, the size of 11 billion in 2024, and is expected to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 5.3% between 2025 and 2029. You can see the dairy markets, how it's expected to grow by about 5.59%, with the market projected to reach 16.5 billion by 2032 in the region. The GCC market, dairy market, is highly competitive, though, due to the presence of many local, regional, and international suppliers. These suppliers compete based on price, quality, brand representation, distribution network, reputation, segmentation, and marketing strategies. The main distribution channels include hypermarkets, supermarkets, grocery and convenience stores, online platforms, and food service establishments. Some of the trends and challenges for the dairy market in the GCC, as I mentioned in earlier slides, the growth of e-commerce. The growth of e-commerce is actually a good thing for any food and drink segment, and certainly for the dairy sector as well. So whether it is a retailer, whether it's an online platform, there's a lot of offerings to consumers online, and that really helps grow the dairy sector in the region. Again, as I touched upon earlier, health and sustainability is extremely important to consumers now, and products that offer that within their range are more likely to succeed. And the challenge, of course, is competition from dairy alternative products. Although that is catching on, I'm not necessarily sure about how big a factor that will be in the years to come. There was a lot of talk about plant-based products about 2 years ago, but I don't see too many people talking about it these days. Yes, I mean, products are still available. You go to events, you see plant-based products, alternative products, dairy alternative products, but the regular dairy sector is growing. I just want to quickly touch upon the UK and the GCC, just to give everybody a quick understanding of how the UK pans out compared to the others in the region. So the GCC is the UK's 6th largest export market and 2nd largest non-EU market. Exports to the GCC in 2023 total £818 million. And this is basically down from 2022 by 6.8%. Top products exported included breakfast cereals, chocolate, and sweet biscuits, not to mention cheese and dairy products. Key exports from the UK to GCC include biscuits, cereals, cheese and dairy, chocolate, and confectionery and biscuits. Dairy exports to the GCC countries, I've put in a brief snapshot of the values. And as you can see, it has grown year on year from, 2022 was higher than 21, 23 was higher than 22. We don't yet have the full year's figure for 2024, although the figures I've seen until the first 10 months of 2024 says that it's going to be slightly down compared to 2023, but we'll have to wait and see how the figures pan out for the entire year. And what I've mentioned, the bracket 2.02% for 2022 and 2.66% for 2023, that's for the entire sort of dairy exports from the UK. So the dairy exports to the GCC is 2.02% of the total dairy exports from the UK to the world. And there I've mentioned the volume of dairy exports in 2023 to give you a snapshot of what products make up what percentage of exports. Routes to market, a very important element for any exporter looking to break into a new market or looking to expand into a market. And I've tried to put in all the different routes to market on this slide, which possibly, anybody exporting to this region have either they use it or have come across. The obvious ones are retail chains and their sourcing offices. So, for example, if you look at the UAE specifically, and people who deal with organizations such as retail organizations such as Spinneys, they have a sourcing office in the UK called JHF. The Lulu Group has a sourcing office in Birmingham called Y International. Choithrams works with a UK-based consolidator, wholesaler. And then if you look at Carrefour, they have their own sourcing office in the UK as well. Food distributors in every country, you have food distributors who distribute to retailers and to food services. They're another very large chunk of doing business. So, when you're supplying to food services, you reach out to food distributors in the countries. UK-based wholesalers, so people like Smiley's and Ramsden. All of these people, for example, are UK-based wholesalers. You can supply to them and they supply to their customers. Although the disadvantage with that is you don't necessarily know where they're supplying your products or where your products are being exported to. But if you want a sort of a quick result, then it works very well sometimes. Import agents, again, in some ways, they import it, they take stock of your goods and then supply to either retailers or food distributors in the countries they're based in. Again, you don't necessarily know where the product is ending up. Online platforms, which I mentioned again earlier in our presentation, the people like Gibson's, Talabat, and so on and so forth. They buy directly. Noon, for example, buy directly, and then people buy from them from the online platform. Airline catering, such as Emirates Flight Catering in the UAE, Qatar Airways, Etihad, all of these have very large requirements. But also, please remember, they also come out with a number of tenders, either 6-month tenders or annual tenders for regular supplies. So again, many times you need to work with a local distributor to be part of that tendering process. And of course, finally, F&B consultants, agencies that can be good as well as not so good, depending on who you're working with. What they do is they actually sort of introduce you to people like retailers, food distributors, and so on and so forth in the country of interest. I thought I should just quickly touch upon how we at AHDB can help you in the GCC, and some of the ways we can, and we've been doing that, is through market briefing, introduction to buyers, information about opportunities in the dairy sector, opportunities to participate in events promoting the UK's dairy sector. For example, I've been in touch with a few of you for some of the events we are running currently. In fact, on the day of this presentation, I'll be in Qatar. We're doing dairy showcase event with Lulu in Qatar, where we're promoting the dairy sector from the UK, and we've got 10 UK suppliers being promoted for a 3-day event. So I'm actually in Qatar as this webinar is being broadcast. Of course, support during exhibitions and trade missions. So exhibitions and trade missions such as Gulf Food, which is happening next month. We did Horeca, Riyadh last year. We did Gulf Food Manufacturing. So obviously, anybody and everybody who's either exhibiting or attending the show, we will be very happy to, and we support you, and we'll be very happy to even support those who are walking the show, not necessarily exhibiting. One-to-one meetings as and when required or prior to a market visit. If you want to have a chat with me about a possible customer, or you would just want to catch up on opportunities in a specific market, I'll be very happy to get on a call with you. Do a Teams call, Zoom call, whatever suits you. And if you're in market and want to have a catch up with me, I'll be very happy to have a chat, meet up, and discuss whatever you want to discuss about the market. Give you an overview of the market you're interested in. And of course, information about changes to regulations that may have an impact on UK dairy exports to the region. So we keep our ear to the ground. We speak to local authorities, regulators on a regular basis to understand what's happening, so that we are aware of any changes that are sort of bound to happen in the near future, so that we're not caught by surprise. And of course, we work with DEFRA and DBT and the British Embassy in the region, British embassies in the region, to overcome any trade barriers that might affect dairy exports to the region. We are currently working with our colleagues based in Riyadh for an issue which we're trying to overcome, which is SFDA. Hopefully that should be resolved soon, and we can then go on and keep doing business with Saudi Arabia. And finally, I just want to give you a snapshot view of the events that we hope to deliver in 2025. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, I'm actually in Qatar on the day of this webinar. delivering the dairy showcase for our exporters, working with Lulu Qatar on that. At the end of the week, I'll be in Jeddah, where we're doing an exclusive dinner, which is hosted by the British Consul General. Again, that event is fully focused on lamb and dairy, specifically cheese. And we've got 7 of our suppliers who've and I'd like to thank them. They provided cheese for that dinner. And again, Gulf Food is happening next month. We've got 8 companies signed up. Saudi Food Show should be a big one. The British Week, again in Lulu, Qatar in May. We don't yet know the dates, but what's going to happen is all the dairy companies that are being showcased in Lulu, Qatar on the 30th of Jan, from the 30th of Jan to the 1st of Feb, depending on how they perform, depending on how consumers like those products and buy those products, they will be repeated at the British Week event in May. We're talking to a retail organization in Kuwait to deliver an event with them. We are looking to possibly do a trade mission as a follow-up to the showcase event in September 2024. The trade mission will visit Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. So watch the space there. And obviously, there's going to be Gulf Food Manufacturing in November, and hopefully Horeca Riyadh once again in November 2025. So those really are the events we're looking to do in 2025. If there is an opportunity to do something else that comes up from now until then, we will certainly keep all of you informed. So that really is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask them at the question and answer session. Thank you again, and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Perfect. So I hope you guys enjoyed that recording from Adil. He's going to be dialing in later during the question and answer session to answer any questions that you guys may have. So next up on the list, we have Tanveer Parkar, our Senior Market Access Manager for AHDB, who comes from a background in Halal certification, and he'll be presenting about understanding Halal certification and labelling best practices. So I'll hand over to Tan.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you to both our speakers, Anita and Adil, for excellent presentation so far. And in terms of from my perspective, as a Senior Market Access Manager within AHDB, as well as somebody who's worked within the Halal certification industry in the past, I would like to share some insight on what Halal is, Halal certification, its requirements, as well as some of the labeling practices that are required for the Muslim countries. So at the agenda, we're just going to look at introduction to Halal, Halal and the dairy sector, Halal certification requirements, certification process, accreditation bodies and standards, and labeling requirements, followed by the Q&As that will take place. So to understand what is Halal? Halal is defined as permissible under Islamic law. The Arabic text that we have in front of you that actually reads Innal halalu bayyana wa innal haramu bayyana, and that translates what is lawful is clear and what is unlawful is clear. So from a Muslim consumer like myself, it's categorically defined to us what we should consume and what we should not consume. So in terms of not consume or haram or forbidden, that is, there's reference to pork, and there's also reference to alcohol, what we should not associate or eat or drink. And in terms of halal, it is very clear what we should consume. So in reference to the dairy, the milk from the cow, from the sheep, and so on and forth. So the principles around halal are around cleanliness, ethical sourcing, purity. So just to cover an example or two on dairy relations, and they are, well, we can use microbial, or plant-based rene instead of animal rene, avoid alcohol-based flavoring, and ensure processing aids meet halal compliance. So dairy requirements for halal. So halal compliance factors associate themselves with source of milk. So it must be from a halal sourced animal, cow, goat, sheep, buffalo, camels. Additives and ingredients. So all additives, the stabilizers, emulsifiers, flavoring, they must be halal certified. Ingredients such as enzymes and gelatin must originate from a halal source. Avoid any contamination of a non-halal or haram animal or haram substance. And again, processing equipment. Generally, as we do good manufacturing practices are in place when we do vegetarian or vegan based products. We already have these on our site. So when we say dedicated line is preferred, where that is not possible, then we can actually do a clean down procedure and demonstrate that during your audit. So here we've got two examples which have been put forward just to highlight the non-halal ingredients. So the Galbani or Jalbani, forgive my pronunciation. So in that cheese, there is an ingredient which is mentioned next to salt is rene. So that is not a clarity whether that rene is from a halal source or not. And also for the munch munch, the last ingredient that has been mentioned is for color, which is carmine. And carmine is the E120, and that actually comes from the insect cochineal, which is a red coloring, and that is not halal approved. So that is not preferred as a halal coloring. So if that was in a product, the certification body generally would highlight that that would not be approved as halal. So the question that everybody always asks me, well, is halal certification mandatory? And the answer is only if you claim halal or intend to sell your product as halal. That is where we are. Halal certification is not mandatory on all dairy products. It is required if your product has been marketed as halal, if you intend to market your product as halal and explicitly put claims on it or labels on it as halal or halal compliant, then yes, it is mandatory. Then you need to have that on. However, the answer to the question, is it mandatory? No, but it is if you intend to sell it as halal. And the benefits of halal certification, it does open access to a larger market. I mean, 1.9 billion Muslim population across the globe. As my colleague Anita mentioned earlier on, Indonesia is the largest population with over 250 million Muslims. You have Malaysia, and you've got the whole of Middle East where we are enticing our product. So it does, having halal certification gives you access to the wider market. It does create a competitive edge. It hands that to you over your competitors. If you have a halal certification on your product and you actually put a claim on it, visuals are available. When a consumer goes to a retail outlet, they see the halal logo, they automatically feel at ease, and you appease the concerns of whether they're having to read the ingredients or not. They see the halal logo and they feel comfortable, they will take your product. Again, it does give you access to international markets as well. So in terms of halal certifications and accreditations, so I'm just going to touch upon a couple of halal certifications requirements and the accreditation bodies. So halal certification bodies do play a crucial role in ensuring compliance with global halal standards. These certifications ensure businesses to access international markets and build consumer trust. There are two types of halal certification in the UK, because we are UK based and I have my knowledge on the UK certification industry, so I will share that with you. There are a group of halal certification bodies who are accredited certification bodies. They have taken their approvals from the likes of MUI, which is where Anita was talking about, BPJPH through them, JAKIM, which is for the Malaysian authorities, ESMA, which is the UAE, and JAC, which is from the GCC region, the Middle East Gulf Cooperation Council. And there are a few certification bodies who are actually self-accredited, they're self-certified, And how they operate is they will have a group of Muslim scholars within their remit or through their mosque, and they will create a certification organization that is more for the local region or local areas. So here we have a list of halal certification bodies which are approved. So the top 5 are actually internationally recognized, either through Malaysia, Indonesia, UAE, GCC countries for Jack. And then at the bottom you have a few of them which are actually have noted on there. So these are self-accredited and they don't have any international recognition, but they do provide certification in the UK. So from a business perspective, it is important that you look at your market reach and what your intentions are. If you intend to go into halal certification and get your product and your organization halal certified, that you do your research and ensure that you have got your target market covered through your certification body. I noticed one of the colleagues had asked a question on HFA, because I think somebody had asked a question, I thought HFA was certified. Yes, they are halal certified for Indonesia as well as Malaysia and the GCC region. And then you've also got the HMC, HCE, HCO, and HQC, who has just entered into the UK market now as well. And they are across Germany and other areas of Europe, but now they have also started certification in the UK as well. So these are just a list of few selected certification bodies who are operating in the UK. Some of them are accredited and some are self-certified. So halal certification process, is it any different to a BRC or an ISO or any other standards that we go through? No, it's not. It's halal certification processes are actually an adaptation of the ISO standard requirements, and a lot of the UK certification bodies do take into consideration that we are heavily focused on BRCGS certifications. So the design and the process of certification is applied through that method. So they will take into consideration that you are BRC certified, and then they will start doing their calculations. So yeah, it's just a case of the initial inquiry will be made. So when you make your initial inquiry, please identify your target market to your certifier. Please highlight that, make them aware that you intend to export to, for example, Qatar, and they will advise you actually you need this particular type of certification, and through JAC, which is a GAC, Gulf Accrediting Center, and not an ESMA, which is for the UAE only specific. So you'll need one for the other GCC countries. And then the next step would be the application process by the certifier. They will approve that. They'll have a look at it. They'll have a look at your requirements and whether they can certify that. Then you'll have a discussion on certification fees and scope of products. Once you've done the audit schedules and agreed the timeline between the parties, once the audits are finished, once you have received your approval, then that is when you can actually start claiming that you're halal certified. So halal certification cost and factors to be considered. And so here is an abstract that I have taken from the Halal Food Authority's website itself. So it's important just to highlight that there is cost implications in how they operate. So within HFA, they actually operate on 2 different schemes. So they have an annual scheme, which is for UK and for Europe. So if you are exporting your product and you intend to sell that product as halal into Europe as well, or for a wider market in Europe, then you can just stick to the annual scheme, what I call the standard scheme they have. It's a 1-year certification scheme, and it's an ongoing year on year. And I spoke to the Halal Food Authority team and I asked them for an approximate cost for a dairy producer or cheese manufacturer, and they said it would be around £2,500 per year. Whereas if you went for the GSO or CIMIC scheme, that is a global certification, so that would actually give you access to not only for just UK and Europe, but all the countries in GCC. And that would cover your Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait, and UAE as well. And in addition to that, you'll also have Indonesia and Malaysia and your Singapore, Thailand. So if you intend to do further afield as well, it will cover all aspects. And that certification is actually based on the ISO principles, which will be a 3-year certification cycle. But that certification cycle will contain regular audits on a year-to-year basis, and that cost is around £3,500 per annum. So that is, again, it's an approximate cost because it does, and it will vary depending on your product, the complexity of the product, and the size of your organization, and so forth. So just in terms of accreditations and who they are, so you have the Jack, the top logo with red and grey, red and black. That is for the Gulf Cooperation Council. That is a GCC. That is certified by Gulf Accreditation Center, and that does cover for your entire Middle East. That is for Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Whereas next to it you have Jakim, but that is by the Malaysian government. So that is for Malaysia only. So they also have their own standard. And then you have Indonesia MUI, which is in operation with BPJPH. So they have their own standard. So the certification body has to be certified and accredited, by them in order for them to certify you to export to those countries. ESMA is more specific to the UAE market only. So they have their own specific standard. It's very similar to the GCC standard, but they've actually just done small changes, and that is for UAE market only, but that is more towards the meat side of it. It would not affect the dairy. So from a professional recommendation, if somebody was said to me, if I want to go to UAE, but also I am considering Saudi Arabia, I would lean towards the GCC certification because that covers all of your aspects. And then at the bottom you have your MUIS, which is for the Singapore accreditation. So again, as I just touched upon the standards, so just a brief overview. So GCC standards, they are the GSO 2055 one, which would be applicable to you as a producer or a manufacturer, which is for the halal products if you intend to go into halal certification. And then you have your GSO 993, that is for, it does say a requirement for halal slaughtering, but if you are getting gelatin on site, so you need to also be aware of that. Then you have the ESMA standards. As you can see, the acronyms, the only difference is the UAE and the GSO. Standards are very same in terms of the text within it. For Malaysian requirements, you have the MS 1500, which is the halal food production, preparation, and handling and storage standard. Again, it does give you a clear guideline of what needs to be within it. And during your audits and during your preparation for site, just like your BRC requirement, you must have these standards present on site. So you would need to ascertain these standards through a download or speak to your certification body, and respectively they should be able to provide you or guide you where to ascertain these standards. Again, for MUIS, for Indonesia, for MUI, the standard is HAS 23000. Again, that's the Halal Assurance System criteria, and again, that also provides you with clarity of exactly what needs to happen in terms of regulations and where they go. And then the same applies for Singapore. So just looking onto halal labeling requirements, we're just going to have a look at some halal labeling requirements and what key elements where it impacts the halal certification, the halal approval, and what consumer takes are. So if you're going to go to halal, the key elements of compliance is to be culturally sensitive, to be aware that halal product is consumed by the Muslim consumers and they have certain religious requirements, and we as producers of product, we should be aware of those and be in a notion where you do not intend to, you don't offend unintentionally. So halal labeling should be, respect religious and cultural belief, ensure inclusivity and ethical marketing that aligns with diverse consumer expectation worldwide. Halal logo, it must be issued by a recognized halal certification body. ingredient transparency, avoid any non-halal ingredients or anything that would portray that might be. So in the beginning when I showed you the cheese and where it says Rene, and if that is from a halal source, or a gelatin which is from a halal source, just write next to it halal gelatin or halal Rene, and so forth. Again, slaughtering compliance does come into play when you've got gelatin involvement, and accurate labeling, no misleading claims. And the reason for that is it's to avoid texts like halal compliant. I have come across products where a product actually said halal compliant, so they weren't certified, but when I questioned that particular producer, they said, oh well, we have a couple of Muslim colleagues who work with this and said, oh yeah, this product is halal compliant, so we've gone ahead and put that on, and that is not acceptable, that is misleading. And image and text consideration should be taken in place when you design your logos, your product text. I know marketing is a big thing, but again, we need to be aware of what we are marketing. Sometimes that sounds cool or sounds good, can lead to consequences, and again, it will have an impact on your brand reputation ultimately. So here's an example of somebody who I'm aware of as a brand, and I know that this particular brand, so the product was called No Sin Gin, and this product was actually sent over to the authorities in the Middle East for approval, and immediately this product was rejected for this particular logo because gin is associated to alcohol, and even though it is no sin gin and is alcohol free, there is a potential misrepresentation, and then again it's got the I, a single I, so they were a bit concerned, like, well, that shouldn't be the case. It wasn't clear to, differentiate from it being non-alcoholic to an alcoholic, because the product name said no sin gin rather than non-alcoholic beverage or something of the. So that was rejected, and they had to redesign the label, and so they went with a complete new label and rebranded the product, and then they got approved to be sold within UAE. And the other one example which could be rejected was, again, this is more towards a brand name and cultural sensitivity. The term divine within Muslim countries, within Islamic culture, is referred to, implied as God is divine. So you can't have a product. Now this particular example I'm using was actually given to me in a presentation during a presentation by the Dubai municipality team. So they did a presentation in London a couple of years ago, and they used this as one of the examples that would be rejected to the food producers. During my time in halal certification, they were invited, and they told most of the food producers that if you had products like these with certain text, that would be conflicting, and that would be considered as culturally not aware, so we would be rejecting that, because for us as Muslims, God is divine, so you can't have a divine rice or a divine porridge, so that would be rejected. And the other, again, offensive or inappropriate imagery. So you have the tea pig. So if you've got tea bags, so this is another brand that I've come across where, so a couple of years ago we did a industry conference, and the venue actually had tea pigs product, and to me it's a tea bag, as such. But if you're a Muslim, when you're seeing, and if you've come from Middle East, or if you've come from, we had Indonesian guests, we had Malaysian guests who are from accreditation bodies doing presentation, and the first thing they did was highlighted that, Tanveer, this is not, it's tea pigs. Pig is reference to non-halal, so can we just get normal tea bags or remove these packaging and just have tea bags there? So it is considered as offensive. The imagery is not fit for purpose at that point from a Muslim perspective, from a halal certification. So if you were to take this for halal certification to your certification body, they would highlight that to you, that the brand or the packaging would need to be changed. Again, during Dubai municipality presentation, they did highlight pot noodles. Don't ask me why, but they were focusing more towards the Bombay Bad Boy, and to them text of bad boy is like only promoting something which is not acceptable. You're portraying bad, so that wouldn't be certified as halal. I mean, this product is available in the UAE, just to be clear, but not as a halal certified product. It is just as a generic product. So when you are taking products, when you're designing your labels or your packaging, please take into consideration the what kind of ingredients you have, what kind of images you have, and your brand name or your product name, because these things will be taken into account and they will highlight those. So your certification body, do you employ, if you're going to go down the halal certification route, you have to take into consideration you have employed them to guide you in the best way possible, not only just to audit you. So if you're unaware of these matters, please discuss those with your certification body at that time. So here just 10 points which I have put together for the Islamic countries. So rather than going to specific of each country, so halal certification, if you are going to display the logo, as my colleague Anita initially highlighted, that if you're going to put it clear, make sure it's there and it is from an accredited certification body, so that you feel confident that you are in the right place. You've not printed stuff off without approval. So make sure your approval has been fully granted. Then you go down that route. Your ingredients, be clear about it. Try and avoid uncertainty. So don't just write gelatin. If it's halal certified and you're going to go halal certification, add the word halal gelatin and then in brackets halal or halal gelatin. And any other ingredients, categorically just highlight them where they are. And even if they're not for halal certification, if you're just generic, then if you've got gelatin in it, put in brackets non-halal so that people are aware. Be aware of cultural sensitivity issues. Section 6, 7, and 8, I'm not going to go into because these are our day-to-day practices here, so we know what we have. We do practice that on a daily basis. But again, compliance to local laws. So whichever country or region you tend to export, abide and follow the rules or the standards if you're going to go down the halal certification. It is important that you do that, so you have your standards inside, just cross-check your requirements, your product specs, and your artwork in line with those standards again. And number 10, avoid misleading claims. So refrain from using the term halal unless you've officially certified. So in terms of my conclusion, halal certification, well, is it mandatory? No, it's not. However, if you intend to enter that particular market where the vast majority of population is Muslim and you want to take halal certification, ensure that you get yourself an accredited halal certifier who is globally recognized. What does it give you? If you go down that route, it does give you access to a wider market. It enhances your brand profile, and again, embrace halal standards, and that will set your brand apart from others. Thank you very much, and any questions, I look forward to having them along with others.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tan, for your presentation. It's clear to see your expertise in this area. So we've had some questions coming through throughout the course of your presentation. So first of all, a lot of our stakeholders will be sort of buying cheddar from others and then cutting and packaging it and then selling it on. In the case of cheddar or any other sorts of cheese, if the original maker is halal registered, but then the cutting and packing is done on a separate site, does the packing site still need to be halal registered?
Yes. So if a product has been manufactured somewhere and then repacked on another location, and then that would need to be certified as well, especially if the branding is going to be different. So if it's a case where it's been manufactured in one location and then repacked elsewhere, and the ownership of both of those locations are the same, it is advisable that each of so the processor actually contacts the certification body and gets both of those locations incorporated into it. So that way they'll be fully certified across the board.
Perfect, thank you. And then we have a question for Adil. So Adil, if you have managed to join us, if you can turn on your camera and your microphone. So the question that came through was just in your presentation, you spoke about dark stores. So can you confirm if they're sort of warehouses or if they're owned by the online service provider or by a retailer? So just as we're waiting for Adil to formally join us on the webinar, I'm just going to ask Tan a couple of questions. So Tan, are there any sort of common misconceptions about halal certification or halal dairy products that you'd like to dispel?
Sorry, there was an interference.
No, that's fair enough. Any common misconceptions about halal dairy products?
Well, there's always a concern generally from an average Muslim consumer, whether it's in the UK or across the globe. The misconception comes into, well, the words of the likes of Rene, gelatin, and coloring. So generally, when there's yogurt products, so a lot of the Muslim consumers tend to start reading. Aside from that, there isn't anything major in terms of, you know, is it going to be halal or is a source of the milk, from an out of the ordinary animal? Because generally we tend to, it's quite clear, and in terms of what we use and the products. I mean, in the UK, most Muslim consumers don't have any major concerns because they're aware of the legislation, the rules. So there's a lot of comfort within the UK. And when the product, it's important to highlight that when we export our products into the likes of Middle East or Malaysia, Indonesia, there is the thing for being British brand. It is highly thought of, and when you market your product in that sense, it is, there's an assumption that this has been taken care of. So there is a comfort zone. It's when you go to Middle East, they feel comfortable when they see the British brands coming into play. When you tell them that you're from UK, there's that part of comfort. So the misconception side of it, or the concerns, are not as extreme as it would be for the meat industry, to say the least.
Thank you very much. Adil, so going back to the question aimed for you, can you just clarify a little bit more around dark stores? So are they warehouses, are they owned by the online service provider or by the retailer?
Hi there. Sorry if everybody can hear some background noise because I'm in a large retail outlet here in Doha. Uh, can everybody hear me properly? Rachel, can you hear me?
Yes, all good.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, I mean, dark stores, um, as I tried to explain in my presentation, they are owned by retail outlets, online platforms, generally by online platforms, and to some extent by retail organizations here in the region. So as I mentioned again, those are only accessible to the organizations that own them, and they use those dark stores to service customers in a particular locality. So, for example, I'll give you a good example of Noon in the UAE. When I last met them a few months ago, they had something like 90 dark stores in Dubai. What that means is they have small stores, warehouses, retail outlets, whatever you call them, in 90 different locations in Dubai. And they have a service which delivers grocery in 15 minutes. So if I order on the 15-minute Noon service, that order goes to the closest location to me. It's picked up by a rider and delivered. The order is picked up by a rider from the closest dark store, which is only accessible to Noon. It is not accessible to consumers like us. So the rider goes to the closest dark store, picks up my order, and delivers it to me. So that really essentially is a dark store. It's a retail outlet, it's a warehouse, but only accessible to the retailer or the online platform to deliver to its customers. I hope it's clear enough.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adil. And thank you for being able to join us, even though you're currently in market doing some trade promotion work. So we've just had some more questions coming in. First of all, can we just double check that the Halal Food Authority is approved to accredit across the GCC? So Tan, are you happy to answer that question?
Yes, I can confirm that they are. and
Nice and,
they can
yeah.
nice and simple. Yeah, they are approved for the GCC region, and they cover all areas within GCC.
Brilliant. And next up, have you ever come across a halal certified animal rennet that can be used within cheese making?
And I haven't, unfortunately. But I know that there is a use of the vegetarian based ones, but I've not come across. I mean, I have been, unfortunately, having out of halal certification for a number of years, you know, but I'm not aware of anything of late. What I'll do is I will speak to the colleagues within the industry and check, and I'll come to you, Rachel. And if you want to just forward the response back to Ben, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. So we're just going to pause there. If anyone's got any last minute questions, then please feel free to send them in. If not, then thank you so much to all of our speakers for their time and being able to present on halal certification, both within the UK and also for overseas markets. I hope you guys have found this as a useful and informative webinar. And yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. If anyone's got any last minute remarks, please speak now. But if not, then I thank you for joining, and we hope to speak to you again soon.
I think we've got one hand, Annabelle.
Ooh.
Just saw a hand flash up, sorry, while you're saying your thank yous.
Oh, let me just see. Potentially Annabelle's just saying thank you.
Great. Thank you all.
Thanks, Adil.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to drop us an email. But if not, then have a lovely day.
Bye now. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Bye-bye.
lovely day. Bye-bye.
Bye.